Microphone.
Okay.
We got you. You don't have to get right on it.
We're not used to
No.
Yeah, so make sure people in the back can hear.
Or speaking at all. So, those of you who know me know that this is really one of the hardest things I'll ever do. And I always called Kevin Kev. I didn't really ever call him Kevin. And Scott called him Vin.
I got that from his friends.
Yeah. And actually, out of the four of us, he and I were probably the least close. But it doesn't matter. He's my brother. He's my oldest brother. But he was first a son. And then he was the older brother. And a husband and a father. And an uncle. And a grandfather. And a friend and a hockey coach. And he was so much more. And 6 years doesn't seem like much, but we were 6 years apart. And growing up, I felt so much younger than him. So much younger than him. He and Jan were 2 years apart. So we were a lot closer and schooled together. And I always felt like such a young little sister. And he was so cool. You know, he delivered papers on his bike. He was riding bikes with the other boys in the neighborhood. Always listening to music. He had a go-kart. I loved that thing. I wanted a go-kart. And then something happened and we weren't allowed to have it anymore. I think the person was okay. Remember?
The person.
I think it was near your
shall not be
house.
named.
I think it was near your house. Was it one of you? I don't know. Anyway, I loved that go-kart. Part of me wanted to be a boy. He would brush our collies. We had Smokey and then Lad. And we were talking before about Lad always visiting over it. The shepherds, they're all three here, so, and their dog Kippy, and brushing them, and the fur just kept coming. And as Jan said, I was already going to say, that bedroom in the basement was just too cool. And, you know, an interior makeshift room, but he loved it, and he had a little safe in the wall, in the paneling, and we had an intercom. We had an intercom. How cool were we? And we would beep, beep, dinner's ready. Like, we didn't go to the top of the stairs and call them. We called them on the intercom. We were really cool. We were so cool. It was the original man cave. Before anybody even called anything a man cave. It was just his time. Actually, I just thought of something I wasn't going to say, but I'll say. When I got my wisdom teeth, like, I refer to my mom as our tiny little mom because none of us are like her. She was like 5'3", just little. We're not. And I had my wisdom teeth out, and she had to bring me home, and she couldn't even get me up the stairs, so she put me in Kevin's room in the basement. So I was out of it. And I just slept there for hours, and then I was able to get upstairs later. Maybe probably when Dad got home. Probably helped me get upstairs. But I remember one time when he came home from college, and I had a friend over, Paula, and we were listening to the Yes album. Now, I'm probably the least musically inclined of the family. Like, I like music, but nothing like the rest of them. So Mom told me later that Kevin said to her he thought for sure that had to be Jan because he assumed I was listening to the Bay City Rollers. Which I don't think I've ever said without cracking up. That's what I always thought he thought of me, and he did, right? But then Mom told me that because she wanted me to know I guess maybe that day decided I was actually pretty cool. A little bit, I guess. So after I got out of school, he was already married to Lisa, and I went alone to visit him and Lisa, and they took me into Chicago. They lived in the suburbs. They took me for authentic deep dish pizza. Pretty sure that was my first time in Chicago, probably.
Yeah, probably.
And all you Connecticut folks will appreciate that I didn't really like that deep dish pizza. And I think I never had it again.
I live there now, and they still don't like it.
I had to be nice because they thought it was great. Totally a pizza snob. But he got me to the big city near where he lived, right? And now I've been there several times, and I love it. And but he and Lisa brought me there for the first time. So one thing Kevin loved was having a fire. And boy, did he have fires. He would burn anything. Scott even told me he would burn hockey sticks. Like, that's not really probably very good to do because there's like stuff in there, right? But I remember many years ago he told me and Jan, probably Scott, but I remember Jan and I, that he got a chimenea. We'd never heard of a chimenea, and we thought he made that word up. We totally cracked up. We thought he made up that word.
I think he met the salesman on a business trip. Like it was like John Candy and on the planes, trains, and all. And he sat next to the guy on the plane. The guy's like, "Hey, I sell chimeneas." Next thing he's down at Home Depot buying the first chimenea in the country.
Probably the first, and very many, because he burned the crap out of those things. Yeah, they would break. Like he burned it hot, high flames. They currently have a beautiful fire pit in the yard in Kentucky, and Clint was burning a very hot fire after the memorial in May, and Lisa was all freaking out, and she's like, "Oh, what am I worried about? Kevin already burnt out the canopy. Like there was no tree canopy over that because he burned them hot." And it was great, and we all love having a fire. And Jan's chimney is right there, and it'll be fired up later in his memory, and his honor, and all that. So, as adults, we didn't see each other that much, but we always saw each other at Deer Valley, and. He worked there, Clint worked there, and two of my sons, Christopher and Seamus, have both worked there, and as you know, Jan said, he met Lisa there, so Deer Valley was a lot to us in many ways, and seeing him there was just what it was, right? We always went. But several years ago, it was probably about 7 years ago, he came to Connecticut, and I can't recall why, but he came to see me in my current home that he'd never been to. Paul and I had recently moved to Bristol, so I'm glad that's the only time he saw the home I currently live in. But Paul had just had knee replacement surgery. And I really, growing up, didn't spend a lot of time alone with Kevin. You know, it was just the way it was, the difference in our age. And he and I went to see him, and Paul wasn't really wanting visitors. We were there about 35 seconds. But then we went out for Mexican food, and he was a Mexican food guy, because, you know, he worked in those oil fields in Texas, and he could do hot. And he was really, really loving the restaurant we went to, which I'd never been to before because I just moved to that part of Connecticut. But we had a really good Mexican dinner, and he loved it, and we just talked, and we both have sons, and it was really great. And it really is the only time I remember us doing something, just the two of us, ever. So we spent the night, and in the morning I had to go to work. And I told him before I left, do not let the cats out.
Uh-oh.
One of them got out. But he never told me.
Oh.
I think he called Jan for assistance, and I'm pretty sure she's the one who spilled the beans to me too. Because I never knew until I think it was Harley was already back in and safe, and it was all good. But yeah, we had indoor cats, and Margaret, my very good friend, who was also my realtor, will tell you that when we were looking at this house and the owners showed us pictures and there was a bear in the yard, she was like, "Oh my," and I was like, "Cool." And she couldn't believe it, because she's like, if I was her realtor, I would never tell it. So we had indoor cats for very good reason. So he was a pretty cool guy, but I bet he was a little nervous about that, because, yeah, I'm really passionate about my pets, as we all are. So we are all a hockey family. And in recent years, the one thing that Kevin and I did do that was just kind of us, I think, was texting about hockey. And it was the Rangers for me, the Blackhawks for him, and the Bruins for Paul. I am married to a Bruins fan, it's true. And I really missed that last year when he was battling for his life. And I already missed it. We won't do it this year or ever again. That was our thing for the past several years. And as everybody's told you, he showed so much courage. He fought that glioblastoma, and he never asked why. I did. He never complained. He just accepted what life threw at him, and then he had to deal with it. But he gave us all a really huge gift. He called very many of us, one after the other, over several days to say goodbye. He didn't know what his last day was going to be, but he knew it was coming. I can't even ever imagine getting that call, but he called to say, "I love you. Whenever my time is done, I'll be okay." And the courage it took him to do that is something I think about all the time. I can't even imagine having any of that, to do that, and it was a gift. I'm so sad he didn't get to enjoy retirement. He and Lisa were going to travel to national parks. He didn't get to see his oldest son get married, but we know he was there in spirit. When we last spoke, I told him I hoped he was with my mom, and that I would see him again someday.